There
Big
we
face.
go.
Big
Welcome.
face. I made one.
Yep. Yep. Welcome, everyone.
Oh,
So I could tell you, what I'm writing about now that I'm struggling to explain at any level is just, teaching people the awareness of a match when you're playing judo from every aspect of what your relationship is to your opponent, what your relationship is to the match, to the mat area, every aspect of the match that's part of the game that you need to be aware of. That my kids don't even recognize that they're playing. There's someone else on the mat with them, and without being surrounded by good judo, it's got to be taught.
yeah. You don't know what you don't know, so it's complicated to explain something to somebody when they feel like they understand. When you're trying to be like, you clearly don't. You need to listen without being rude. And some people don't catch the subtle hints, and then when you try to like be as straightforward as possible and as blatant as possible, they take it as, well, you're just mean. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, you asked for my help. That's the answer. It's like when people feel like they have advanced judo or a high level competitive judo and you give them like a basic answer, they're like, well, I know that. Well, if you knew it, you didn't have to ask that question.
No. And the truth is,
And
you
then you
didn't
should,
know. You didn't know it.
yeah.
You didn't know it.
Or you knew it and you just were hoping for some different answer because you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I run into that all the time.
I mean, there's just a lot of things going on at the same time in a match that you need to have your radar up for all different things, and things could change. And those changes at that time could change the way you play the match. You just have to be aware. And the awareness, I just don't see the ability at the point I'm at the lower level, that these kids have that awareness.
Yeah, there's definitely a very, very fine line between teaching quality judo versus competitive judo. And what happens is when the culture or subculture of a region decides to only do the competitive side, you lose all the tradition and fundamentals and foundation where the success was built, because it leads to people at a young age learning more and more advanced techniques, right? Like, I'll give you an example myself. I didn't learn a fireman's until I was like 16, 17 years old. And then when people saw success with it, they started introducing it to younger and younger and younger generations, right? Like, I wasn't introduced to a drop Seanagi until I was like 13. All my Seanagis from when I was a kid were collar, sleeve, or cross grip sleeve, or double cross grip on the feet, standing, when I was a junior. Like,
I don't
well, in the US, it would be like an infantile, right? Or an intermediate.
I don't think I saw a drop Seanagi till 1971, and I started judo in 1960. I don't think I saw one, and I remember the first time I saw one. It was just very strange. It wasn't done.
Yeah.
Drop Seanagi wasn't done, and it goes back to basic foundational skills.
Yeah.
You've got to learn the foundational skills and develop them, and develop at a level over and over at each level. And if you don't do that, it's really difficult to play the whole game.
Yeah. I've had conversations with people, whether it's in jujitsu or at a higher level of judo, where it's like, you guys have to understand how to use the jacket to maneuver and put your partner's hands in positions A, where you can break grips, or B, where you can attack. The jacket is a tool for you to use both offensively and defensively. And they're like, I just hold it. I just grab it. And it's like, no, you don't just grab it. It's there for a reason. Like you have to use everything around you in order to beat your opponent. And when you start handicapping yourself because you're like, Newaza's boring or pins suck, grip fighting is for the lazy or like the people without technique, and you just start removing chunks of the sport, like you really get narrow minded and narrow focused, and it's really hard to, grow as an athlete or compete as an athlete on a high level.
So the challenge is that coming up with curriculum is not difficult, but coming up with people that can actually teach the curriculum is the challenge. Because you're right, we're getting people that have pieces of judo and not the whole package, and it's difficult, and they're not trained or taught to teach every aspect that's necessary.
I remember having a conversation with Keith Bryant a few years ago, and I was like, the biggest struggle, and I told this to the IJF, that Americans have when it comes to developing and growing the sport, our culture is a melting pot of religion, personalities, backgrounds, thought processes, and we cover such like a wide range of people that it's very difficult to keep athletes engaged when you're trying to build a strong foundation. And what I mean by that is when you get hot spots of cultures, right? So, like you take Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York, huge Russian
Mhm.
population. You take Seattle that has like a Japanese slash Asian Mongolian style that's there. You take LA with like the Korean teams that have now surfaced throughout LA. And you
Mhm.
take all these like weird subcultures where like the people who are teaching in those areas are very, very good judo players, but they come with like a different style and philosophy of how the sport should be done and taught, which is okay. But when the athletes are competing and developing, it's very easy for a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 16-year-old to win or lose based on maturity, not skill level. And when you take the Russians in like New England, you take the Koreans from LA, and you take like the Japanese slash Mongolians in like Seattle and all these different like little subcultures, and you were to say, okay, you guys do this style of judo. How about we take that style and then put you in where only people do that style? Like if you were to take the Georgians and the Russians and be like, okay, you guys are winning our nationals. How about you go to Georgia and see if you can compete? Because that's the style of judo you're trying to do, right? They'll lose instantaneously,
Yeah.
right? The Koreans, because they're not competing or training with people who are good enough at that style to improve in that style. When you take a Korean style with a 16-year-old versus a Georgian style at a 16-year-old versus a Mongolian at 16, you make them compete, it's more about maturity and like physicality and who's a better athlete, because they are not worldly enough or like intelligent enough in the sport to learn how to beat all these different styles or how to take their style and compete against the other ones. And without somebody sitting at the head of the table, pulling all these people together to like
Yep.
use the specialized skills that they have and get everybody working together underneath a system, it's really hard to grow, because while they'll be the number one people in these countries and they'll be difficult to beat, every time you send them overseas, they're going to lose to that region on a global scale. They'll always lose. When you look at like the Japanese as like an example, most of the Japanese that hit the international scene lose. Like when you look at their under 23 team and you send them to Europe at the B levels, most of them lose. when we send our 12-year-olds and our 13-year-old athletes to Japan to compete in like the I can't remember what the name of the event is that everybody goes to every year, but there's a big like infantile event that's there. We come back with a lot of medals because they don't understand and the coaches don't teach them how to compete against us. Our coaches here try to teach the athletes how to compete against other styles. They're not focused on how to just be a good judo player. And when you're not doing that at the early stages, when you have to become a good judo player when you're older, it's really difficult on the mental side to like take a step back, go back and like relearn the basics. When you look at somebody like Tiger Woods, who is like, well, I'm the number one person in the world, but like, guess what I have to do this weekend is I have to reinvent my golf swing.
Yep.
And he'll sit down and do it. He'll change his grips. He'll try to figure out a way to get better and improve upon it. Our athletes don't do that. And it's a shame because they're not taught to enjoy the process and they weren't raised in a environment where like they were praised for learning the sport and developing, right? And it was one thing that I grew up in a very strong culture of learning where like, hey, you need to go figure out from all these people on how to, improve yourself as a judoka. So I was always encouraged to like travel to different clubs, talk to different people, train with different people to like take in as much knowledge as I could, which means that my technical ability, to teach and do things while I didn't do it competitively is irrelevant. I always could pull certain moves out of my back pocket to like score with because I was technically good enough to pull those things off. I remember it happened just recently that we were working with Israel Hernandez to do a judo in schools program in Florida. We were
Mhm.
trying to put judo into, I think it's like 86 Catholic schools. And they're going to hire coaches and black belts to become full-time teachers at the schools to teach judo in all the programs. And Jimmy and I had written this book on all the techniques of judo, kind of like a Gokyo,
Mhm.
but written out with pictures and all the throws were at pictures. And like he went to the Uchimata section. He was like, I'm impressed. You actually did that throw right. Because he didn't picture me as like an Uchimata player. He pictured me as like a Seanagi player. And I was
Right.
like, dude, I went to 3 Olympic Games. I know how to do Uchimata.
Sure.
I may not do it competitively. That may not be my thing, but like, doesn't mean I don't know how to do it. And it comes from that like strong foundational background of just like learning the sport. And we've lost that because we are a culture where, we strive kids to compete and we feel like that's the only path for them in the country. And when you do that, you start doing, more competitive techniques, looking for an edge, applying tricks, and not focused on like the benefits of the sport.
Well, the goal is to win and not to get better.
Yeah.
I talk about this all the time. In my school when my kids were young, my students, you know, I always I always promoted, effort over success. Always, you reward effort over success. People that try the hardest in practice, they're focused, they're looking to get better, whether they're winning or not's irrelevant. If you go to 20 tournaments a year and you're doing judo 5 days a week, you've got the kids 200 almost 250 times in the dojo compared to 20 tournaments. You control the culture. You control the culture. So you can develop a culture with your students where they could learn the right way and you could actually teach them. And then as they learn how to learn, then teaching becomes easier. It's important to do that and get this focus away from winning a medal rather than learning and getting better. And certainly learning to train hard because nobody makes it without paying that price of training really, really hard. and that's sacrifice. And I don't know, and I don't see many people willing to make that sacrifice. So it's a
There's a
challenge.
comment here from YouTube, and I think they misunderstood. No one's blaming foreign coaches for teaching what they're best at. We're saying that it's very difficult to become the best in the world at a particular style when you don't have the training resources of that region's style. If you take a Russian kid from Pennsylvania and you leave him in Pennsylvania to learn a Russian Georgian style of judo, the Russians and Georgian that have an entire country system to make the best athlete at that system will always be somebody who's training locally, unless that kid or that adult is in a system where they can expand that knowledge, right? I use a lot of Russian and Georgian judo throws in my competitive days. It's not that it's not useful, it's that you have to understand how to package it all together. Part of building a system has nothing to do with the judo aspect or the judo teaching, but it's understanding all of your resources and how do you use these resources to get the best athlete possible. Like, what type of strength and conditioning can you do? What type of gripping strategies can you do? That's why we have a heavy Newaza focus, because it's where the rest of the world lacks. It's
Mhm.
why that's why we pay attention to our strength and conditioning, because that's where a lot of countries fail. They focus more on the randoris, and if we can get in physical better shape and we can pay attention to the gripping patterns and we can get the gripping patterns systematically, happening in the match, we can wear down our opponents or get them frustrated where they make mistakes or overextend themselves, where we can use our technique. If you think you're going to stay home at a local dojo and learn Japanese style judo and then go compete with the Japanese, you're going to lose. You're going to have to understand that you're going to have to incorporate these other things, and somebody has to teach you those things, right? And that's where we're falling short as a culture, is there's no togetherness, which means that those subcultures are staying home and they'll never be able to, when they grow up, compete with that country's ability. Like, those Korean kids that are training in LA are super talented, right? But if they keep training in that style, they will always lose to the Koreans. It's just like they don't have enough bodies with of that style pushing them to curate who can be best at this style, then figure out who's the best at that style and teach that person how to take that style and apply it to the rest of the world. And that's really what it comes down to, is the countries that have the best systems are the ones that stay home the longest and then take their best athletes and teach them privately how to take that curriculum that's run throughout the country and apply it to win on a global stage. You're not supposed to build a curriculum to compete on the global stage for your grassroots judo club. And that's where, like, a lot of Americans really struggle, is they feel like when you make that statement that you're putting them down, and we're not. Like, even at my jujitsu school, I tell people all the time, if you want to win the worlds, don't train at my club. I'm not here for that. That's not why I have this school. I have this school because I have a bunch of weekend warriors that are competitive, that like to learn, and they like to fight. So they come to my jujitsu school. Are they going to spend tens of thousands of dollars a year traveling the country to compete? No, but that doesn't mean that they can't have a place that they enjoy training at. Like, you got to understand, like, what your goals are and what your resources are and how much time you want to dedicate to the task.
Yeah, and you can't stay on an island. You need to go and spread out. You need to go and work with other clubs, other coaches, get yourself exposed. I would think if our organization understood this and we found a way to work together, it would make everyone better. But this idea of every club wanting to win for their own glory, as opposed to making everyone better as a country, That's where we lose out, and we just don't get exposed to each other, and everyone's worried about winning a junior Olympics rather than trying to develop people to win on a international level.
Yeah, we're definitely not a there's no Team USA factor for judo.
No,
It's all individual based. We had a team, when I was competing where like, the 8 of us that were like successful and the staff that were successful were like together, and like when one of us won, we were happy. When one of us lost, we were all angry, and we were like in this together, pushing ourselves to like become the best. The country just needs to understand that there's a hierarchy to the sport, and like you should want to be on the hierarchy pyramid somewhere rather than isolated. Like if you look at a sport like wrestling as an example, like, a lot of these coaches take pride that like an athlete went to their school, came through their school, then went to a college, then made the US team. That coach at the beginning that trained that athlete takes pride that he was able to influence that athlete well enough to want to stay in the sport long enough to go and win or compete at the Olympic level. They take pride in that. Our coaches don't take pride. They're insulted when an athlete wants to go to the next stage. And it's like, well, if you want to take the athlete to the next stage, then stop teaching athletes at the previous stage. If you want to be a middle school coach, be a middle school coach. If you want to be a high school coach, be a high school coach. Don't be all coaches, because you don't have enough time to dedicate and perfect the craft at that age group of what those people need. And the problem we have is none of our coaches spend enough time to perfect the craft at that particular age group to get people as good as they can get and then move them along. They hold on to them and they get distracted, and then the beginners suffer, then the advanced guys suffers, and they're like all over the place with their curriculums. And it's a
yep,
challenge.
yep, that's exactly what happens. Exactly what happens, and that's why you see people that are 16 years old that don't stand correctly, they don't grab correctly, they don't point their toes when they hook. I mean, all the simple, basic fundamentals that are not drilled in at a young age because everyone's looking to go to the next level. It just doesn't work that way. And it won't work when you get on a bigger scale, bigger level of judo.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where like you've got to take pride in your job and want to do the best you can at that job. And it feels like all the coaches are always trying to climb the corporate ladder uh in the sport, and it's like there's no ladder to climb in this country. Like I don't understand why we're all fighting over like scraps at the table. Like why can't we all just come together and like share knowledge and like be here for the athletes in the community? it's
Yeah.
it's a challenge. I mean, there is something to be said about like, too many chefs in the kitchen, and I understand that. So like just put some people in charge, man. Like I don't it is what it is.
Yeah, but bringing it together is what it's going to take, and bringing everyone together, and that's what we need.
It needs somebody at the helm to like, you know, force everybody to come together to like do it, and it needs the backing of the organization to right the ship.
Yep, yep. In our lifetime.
I mean, to be honest, it could change on a dime.
Yep, that would be
You
great.
know, it takes one vote from the board to be like, we're going down this path. Let's do it. Because the way I see it, and I had this conversation with Eddie Liddy, I had this conversation with Keith when I retired from 2016. When they told me I wasn't qualified, I was like, okay, no problem. Not qualified. I agree. I get it. No coaching experience. Don't give me the under 23 job. How about you hire somebody, pay them, so I can come take the job. That way there's a benchmark for people to hit. I go pay somebody else to do it then. And then I'll come take the job. Right? It's not that hard. Like there should be people hired and fired and hired and fired, and it should go through that life cycle. That's what the rest of the world does.
Well, it would have to be a professional program, and that's where we start hitting some barriers.
And it's just
It's a challenge. What kind of questions do we have here?
I don't know. I'm like half looking at the comments. Sorry, guys. Steve's got me on a rant. I
I'm
ranted.
sorry.
I spent 25 minutes ranting. He got me going. My club's located in Wakefield, Massachusetts for jiu-jitsu, and we have another Jimmy's place is right above mine. So we're in the same building, just two different floors.
With judo on a higher level that I'm already in my 30s, I'm working with her 4 to 5 days a week, competing a lot, but there's judo I can look forward to at my age. Well, Sam, you're in your 30s and you want to play high-level judo. You need to train to play high-level judo. I mean, really train to play high-level judo. I know that when I was training at the level of the high level, I was training 6 days a week. Travis, I'm sure, was training 6 days a week, 3 times a day. It's a massive commitment to train at the highest level. Now, if you want to train and do judo, you can do judo 5 days a week and get a lot out of it. You want to make sure you're doing the right things. But to work at a high level, you have to. It's a job. It's a professional athlete.
I'll say this one last thing about the coaching thing before we get into these videos, right? I'm of the mindset of like indecision is the worst decision, right? I don't care who you hire. You should just put somebody in charge that understands it is their responsibility to train the athletes to be the best judo players they can be. Not all athletes can win on the international stage. They don't have the technical ability, the physical ability, the mental ability. Something might be missing, which is fine. But if we don't start training our athletes to compete at the highest level on a national scale and taking those people, we are doing ourselves a disservice because every quad that goes by when these athletes retire, they're not going to have the training mentality and the coaching that they should have had when they were athletes. Therefore, they don't understand the coaching they should be giving to athletes. And so it's hard to grow and as a nation, it's hard to really expand when you don't have those black belts that I remember in 2008 was our biggest growth period because the entire country was behind going to the Olympic trials, right? If you were top 8 in the country, you could go. So a lot of people were training, a lot of people were competing, a lot of people were looking for points. In 2012, when we went to that world ranking list, everybody stopped making the commitment to train judo because it all of a sudden became a financial commitment when you realized you couldn't win overseas. Like, what were the chances you were going to be number 1 in the country? Right? Like it diminished our ability to train quality black belts because we allowed everybody to stay home. In 2008, you could stay home and train because the country was training for this goal. And everybody felt proud because they could go home and say, hey, I went to the Olympic trials. That's a big deal. Now there's no trials. So now what are you going to say? You're just going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to train to go do judo on the international stage, knowing you're never going to make the Olympics because A, you financially can't afford it, or B, you're not technically good enough to do it. And what happens is without that centralized training program, all those people who would have been in the room training with the people who were going to make the financial commitment, when they retire from the sport, they have a national training center background where they could open up a club and go teach, and they understand that development that's needed. When they're left at home to just train, kind of go, kind of make it, they have a very lackluster training experience when they're still allowed to compete internationally, so they don't understand how that system works. So when you look at like a country like Canada, where it's like, hey, all these people that retired from the Shidokan, they went and opened up clubs. They went back home to teach. Nick Trenton's a perfect example of that, of like, hey, yeah, he didn't win an Olympic medal, but he spent a decade at Shidokan training with the national team, competing, being coached, competing, training. When it comes time to open up a club, like he understands even what to look for and what becomes a successful judo player in case he has somebody coming through the ranks he could send to Montreal later on down the road. A lot of these people don't even know what hard work looks like because they haven't been in a room where like that's how an Olympic champion trains. That's the mindset. That's what sets that person apart. They don't even know what it looks like.
Yep.
And it's hard because you have these coaches that are watching these people train and they're like, my guy can win the Olympics. You have no like reason to ever think that because you've never seen it. You've never seen the day-to-day grind of what it takes to medal at the Olympics. You have no idea. Right? And it's like going to a Paris training camp to watch a couple of guys train for 3 days. That doesn't give you the consensus of what 365 days looks in a training cycle for 8 years. Right? That's vastly different. Anybody can work hard for 3 days. And most of them don't even do all their training when they're at the camp. They do all their training at home with all their teammates. And camp is like playtime for them. So that's my rant. I'm sticking to it. It is what it is.
I'm not going to add. I'm not going to add anything. I do have something to add, but I'm not going to. Let's go to the videos.
All right, is it my job? I'm pulling them up. All right, here we go. Video 1. Let's see what we got. I don't know. I'm clicking on a video.
That's the way it normally goes.
Oh, the power.
Watch, you get some different views here. Oh.
Yeah, he got busted.
Look at that lift.
Hurt himself when he did it, too. Look at this. Boom, commitment.
Look at that lift. Oh, man.
That's impressive.
That's one heck of an Uchimata, huh? Yes.
Just the power of it.
Yeah.
You know?
No question. These are big boys, too.
I just don't understand, like, again, it comes down to, like, gripping and positioning. Like, why would you take a risk like that?
Yeah, I don't.
Like, you're, like, seconds into this match.
Yeah.
Why would you, like, horse collar grip your opponent, like, on what could potentially, in my book, like, be the first/second exchange?
Yep.
Impressive, though. Yes, Judo Canada is a higher level of judo than the U.S. They pay coaches. They pay regional coaches. They're government funded. They have a system to take somebody from a local club to a regional training center to a national training center to an international stage, and they have a pipeline. They do have some issues right now where, like, there's not a lot of development behind their Olympic medalists. So when they do retire after Paris, when it comes to LA, I don't know how strong their team's going to be, because when you look at the athletes that are behind them, they are not at the level of these guys. And I don't think they're going to stick around after Paris. But
Yeah,
we'll see.
They got some top players now, though.
Yeah.
They sure do.
Yep. Oh, he did him dirty. The sneaky firemen's. Oh,
That's a
I
nice.
tell people all the time, man, like you got to play offense. You can't play defense, man. Don't try to get out. Just try to score. That's your best course for defense, man. He only messes up because he tries to pull that leg out and he loads himself. Oof. John, I think Taguchi's the one going to the Olympics, statistically speaking. I don't think Klimkate gets a shot unless Taguchi's hurt.
I think she just won today too, Klimkate.
Who?
Klimkate.
Mm.
Yeah,
I
I,
think
I, I heard too that Taguchi's statistically there, but I talked to Nick in Boston, and Nick wouldn't commit to anything.
no, I think there's a rule. There's like they did like highest world ranking, who won the World Masters, and who's going to win the Worlds this year. And I
Yeah.
think Taguchi's number one in the world.
Yep.
She won World Masters. And I don't think Jessica can pass her on the points, even if she wins the Worlds.
Wow.
So I think Taguchi has 2 of the 3 slots. I think. I'm also not Canadian, and I don't follow their system that closely.
Well, like
but
I
I
said,
vaguely remember that's kind of what they were talking about implementing last year. But they could change things all the time.
Nick was really non-committal.
Yeah.
Which we'll see what happens. But I personally I like them both a lot. I think Taguchi's better, but I like them both a lot. They're both worthy. It gives a discussion. It opens up a discussion for a wild card. If you think about Deguchi and Klimkate and Mariama and Abe in an Olympics, should there be a wild card if you're 1 and 2 in the world or something? Just a discussion. But
Well, it's almost like if you want to make the world of judo competitive, you would say, okay, if you're top 8 and you're seated, you're going to be seated at the Olympics, you are guaranteed a slot. I don't care if all 8 are Japanese.
Yep.
You get there, like you get a slot. You prove to us you are the best in the world over a 2-year period, you get to go to the Olympics.
Yep.
And then after that, we remove all the doubles.
Yep. That would be fine with me. It certainly would be competitive.
Yeah.
It would open up for a phenomenal Olympics.
Well, it's like even who was it? Germany 100 kilos 2016.
Yep.
I think there was like a issue with like Dimitri Peters and Fry, and I think Dimitri was like he was an Olympic bronze medalist from 12, but Fry was number 1, Dimitri was number 2 in the world.
Yep.
And Dimitri he needed to go to an event to like pass him on points, and Germany refused to send him and said he couldn't spend his own money to go.
Oh man.
They were like, nope, you used your events, you're not allowed to go and get an extra event. Too bad.
You think the judo community is losing by not having Mariama in there? He's such a beautiful judo player. It's just a
Well,
shame.
and it's funny because if like John mentioned that like you're going to see a lot of people with JPN on their back, but I don't think so. I don't think there are that many Japanese judo players who are in the top 8.
No, I agree.
There's not
I
that
agree.
many. There's some that are like 8, 9, 10, 15. Like if you look at 81 kilos, there's like not 3 of them. If you look at 66, there's not 4.
I would be no different than France.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same, 1 or 2.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a handful of girls divisions where there's 2 really good French girls in there.
Yeah.
But no, it wouldn't be overwhelmed. That'd be interesting.
Oh, he's going to smash this kid. He's going to pancake the crap out of him. Oh, Uchimata, I didn't see that comment.
Yeah.
John, I don't think Japan could produce more top players. When you guys go to Japan and you train in Japan, they are all good, but they are not great. There are only a few great judo players. Most of them are like if you were to line up like all the colleges with all the best athletes, like, and then you throw like Europe in there and like the world in there, they are not competitive. Just so that we're all on the same page. Japan is not this crazy factory where like you're gonna pull 10 66 guys that could all go win the worlds. Sometimes you get guys, you can call me a hater all you want, but the facts are the facts, right? Like even at 81 kilos, they've never really produced more than two at a time, one at a time. At 90 kilos, it's been the same. They're like hit or miss. 100 kilos, apart from Inoue, there wasn't really somebody behind him. Heavyweight, you had Suzuki and the other guy at one time. Can't remember his name now. Muneta.
Muneta is heavyweight. Yeah.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
Suzuki at the same time. Like,
Yeah.
but there's never like extras, right? Even now, like, look at their heavyweights. Like, some win, but like the Russians are competitive, the French are competitive. Like, Tolder
They
from Germany was
don't
competitive.
have a Yamashita and Saito like they did in the 80s.
Yeah, like they're not just going to all of a sudden have this absurd amount of talent just produced because they can. If they could, they would, but they're just not there. They're always going to be a step or two below. That's due to like resources, funding, like you name it. It still takes to develop somebody like an Abe and a Moriyama to get to a world number one stage. It still takes a lot of financial dollars to travel the world, to get the experience, to train with the right people in order to compete on that stage, especially when you're talking about 14 weight classes. I mean, just to put two people in there, that's 28. That's 28 people. You figure to go from Japan to Paris is probably $1,000 a flight. That's 30 grand just in air travel for the two. You're telling me we're going to get five? Like, that's a huge budget that, like, I just don't think, like, that kind of money exists in the sport. Especially when you're talking about producing, like, a second-rate judo player in comparison to the two that you already had. You look at, like, in my weight class, like a guy like Kohara, right? Like, I mean, we could probably pull up the world ranking list here and share it and just go through it, but not what we're here for. But, I hate when guys do that. I hate it.
This control is just amazing.
Oh, it hurts my shoulder just watching it. That cross grip Ogoshi.
Look how he changes the direction. Wow.
Yeah. White touched the leg anyway. Shido. Mate Shido.
No, I don't think so.
I'm going to watch it again.
That is.
These guys are so strong for their weight class. They have so much power for being such little people. And like a pound-to-pound ratio. Oh. I think the best, going back a second to the Japanese thing, because he called me a hater, right? But I think at the best time when you looked at like the amount of people that could compete in any one weight class for Japan, it was actually during my era, because I think Japan at one point for 73 kilos had 4 world champions, like back to back, and a different guy won it each time. Because they were like trading off like who could go and who couldn't go at the time. I think that was their like best era that you could put like 4 people in that could potentially go. But then there were massive swings in like, that guy didn't go to the Worlds because he was losing somewhere else. So they sent another guy who was winning, and then that guy started losing, and they sent a different guy. And it was just this back and forth game. Like you can't just all of a sudden be like, well, I'm gonna teach you guys more judo. A lot of it's mental. Like these guys just don't have what it takes. That was a fast entry though. I'm just gonna rewind that.
Yeah,
That was
this transition is beautiful. Just a
Yeah, that
great
was fast.
transition.
Look at that. Boom, right behind the knee. That Cuban Sankaku. That's what we call it in the States anyways.
Oh.
Ooh.
She's dangerous on the ground, Jessica Giles. She's good on the ground.
Break her toes.
Yep.
Get out.
You ain't getting rid of that. We talk about that speed to transition, in Newaza, how
She had it.
oh yeah. It's beautiful to watch.
Boom. That was smooth.
Yeah.
I don't even care about the rest of it. Just
Yeah,
the end.
the transition was beautiful.
Hey, speaking of Japan. Oh. Like you just can't like produce this. These are like generational things. Like guys like Abe just don't grow on trees. Every judo player in Japan is not like this.
This French guy was giving him a real hard time in the way he was gripping and attacking, and Abe couldn't get started. This is like the first time he got 2 hands on him, and he got him.
Yeah, though, like I get it, like it's a problem, but he's just hanging in the fight. He's not winning the fight, right?
No,
He's
not
just
at
making
all.
it as difficult as possible.
He was avoiding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, avoiding. No question. No, but Abe's Sode and Sayanagi has gotten so strong that he's developed an incredible Osoto. You've got to respect his forward. You just have to. He's too good.
Oh. He must be one physically strong athlete.
And well conditioned. He always beats Mariama in a long golden score. And Mariama makes a mistake usually. He gets frustrated. And Abe's really disciplined. It's a good player. It's going to be hard to beat. Hard to beat.
I remember watching him in Tokyo, just like the amount of fear he had in his opponents, like when he would flinch, how much resistance and reaction he would get from them, like unbelievable. What's this one? Ooh, the sister. Oh, that hurts the pride. That's emotional damage for sure. Oh. Right against the knee.
Yep.
Buckled.
Love that Osoto.
Is that what you would call that?
Well, it's turned, right? She hit the Osoto and the direction changed, and she turned it into like a Harai. How you want to call it. But that the entry is straight and then it's turned. That's how I see it. Straight, and then she turns, pivots. As the reaction comes, she just changed the direction.
Boom. Oh, maybe Ashiguruma.
Yep.
Maybe.
Yep.
I actually don't know how they like classify the difference. I mean, I was at the IJF Academy, but like in those like weird instances, like I don't know, did she lift with the leg? Did she walk the leg?
What you want, but she She made it work, right? Speaking of Ashiguruma, I think we have one coming. There you go.
Yeah.
There's an Ashiguruma.
Oh, yeah, buddy. Solid was Ari. Oh, that's why he was defensive. He was winning. And he had 2 Shidos. He had to stand there and take it.
Ugh.
Oh, the power in the hands.
Yeah.
I really wish I was better at that throw from like a competitive standpoint. I was too much of a brute. Oh.
I like this one. Just a simple tap kochi turned into a makikomi. Wasn't expecting it.
Sucks for that guy.
Guys that are good with their feet.
Oh, I missed the play button. I want to watch it again. Oh, that's why he was trying to pick him up.
Yep.
Got greedy.
Made a mistake. I like this.
Oh. Oh.
This is perfect, right? Perfect
Oh.
kochigari. I love when big guys do that.
Oh. The head fake.
Yep.
Bam. Boom.
You know, teaching people how to force a reaction takes time. This is just perfect. Perfect.
Well, yeah, because you can't really teach it. The other person has to respect it enough
Right.
to warrant the reaction.
Right. Right.
It's like when all the kids here are trying to do judo and they're trying to like fake me out. I'm like, you're not intimidating me.
Right.
Like, I know what you're gonna do before you do it. Like, just take your shot. There's no faking out here. But
John, you are correct. That was a reaction to the Sayanagi. No question. No question that was what it was. And that's not as good as Kono Oguruma. Thanks. It's been a long time since I was able to do Oguruma, but I guess I did. The it's so critical to understand when you're a threat and how to use that threat to your advantage, you know. And again, we're talking about teaching that. It's a challenge. If you're not surrounded by it and feel it all the time, you know, I imagine you were around good judo when you were younger. So was I. So I felt good judo all the time. So I didn't have to. I learned it a little bit by osmosis. You know. I was there. I saw it. I felt it, and then I was able to recreate it because it was around me. When it's
yeah,
not around you, they just kids don't see it. They don't understand it.
yeah. It's definitely one of those like it's never taught. It's one of those things where you have to want to throw the other guy bad enough to learn it.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, you start like playing a game where it's like, oh, I can never get this thing to work. You know what? I'm gonna try to trick him. gonna try to trick him. I'm gonna go back here, and then I'm gonna do the throw. And then you try to do it, and like you start trying to like play these like, games while you're in the middle of a fight. And that's where it becomes fun and you're like playing with it. It's not so much like aggression and anger and like brutality like a lot of people think it is. When you're doing that many rounds of randori, it turns into like technical battles and games and like trying to get the guy to think you're doing A so you can go do B, or you do A 6 times and then you do D because he's playing so much defense to A, you can just jump to move D. And a lot of people aren't willing to train in a manner where they facilitate those types of rounds. They try to win every exchange instead of like
Trying to get better.
Play the game.
Yep.
And it's a difficult game to play because both people have to be willing to play the game. If they're not willing to play the game, you can't really play. It takes two to tango.
I know. It's a challenge. Dennis Varus Kosoto Taitoshi. Yes, Norman, that is a great example.
We played one of his on here, right?
Yep,
That title where he like right in the middle of the mat.
Absolutely. Does it beautiful.
Yeah.
What was the worst injury you've had to deal with as a judoka? Well, I don't know. Sometimes your pride is your worst injury, huh? God. I don't know if anything has hurt worse than that.
I'm gonna steal that word. That one time my pride got hurt.
Yeah.
Emotional damage. I don't know. I don't know. They all feel bad in the moment, worse than the others, right? And it depends on like how you're grading like the severity of the injury. Like, is it time? Is it pain? Like there are some things that you can train through that are really painful for a really long time. There are some things that like knock you out of the sport and you just can't do anything about it. Yeah, I've never torn my ACL, so I'm not sure. I think my worst ones, if I had to put them into buckets, and they're all worse for like different reasons. My concussion was one in 2015. That one was really bad because that knocked me out. Was it 2014? 2015. I think it's 2015. No, it wasn't 2015. It was 2014. Yeah, 2014. No? I don't remember. It was a long time ago. But that one knocked me out from February to June. Like no training. Couldn't remember what I had for lunch. I can't even remember when it happened. My knee surgery from the infection was another one that was really bad because that one was, again, a really long time. It was a really massive surgery, and we didn't think I was going to come back from it. When I dislocated my SI joint, that one was really bad and hurt really bad. When I herniated C4, 5, 6, and 7, that was really scary because I was laid out for weeks in neck braces trying to get it to calm down, and it was a long physical therapy process. Those were ones that were like scary, but not necessarily painful, but still took a lot of time.
It's hard not training, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hard not training.
And then there was ones like in 2009 when I broke 9 ribs and had to fight the nationals because they wouldn't give me a medical pass. Right? So it's like that one I didn't train through, but I had to fight the nationals and fought 5 matches with my ribs like all cracked and mangled. And I was doing Novocaine shots in my chest to like try to relieve the pain and the pressure. So I wasn't feeling it and I couldn't breathe. Um, that one was really bad. And I actually had to like drive home because I couldn't get on a plane because my ribs were so messed up. So, they're like different ones. And it's like, you know what? Like, to be honest, like probably like some of the most painful ones. And again, it's a lot of it's psychological more than anything. But break your finger, man. Break your finger and do competitive judo. Because you know what? Everyone's gonna call you a sissy because you're not training through it. But you know what? It hurts. It hurts.
I was going to say that when you train every
Right?
day, your fingers and toes are in pain
Oh,
every day. Every
like
day.
I had a Liz Frank fracture on my right foot when I was training for London because I broke it because I tried to throw a guy into a metal chair at a competition and ended up breaking my own foot and tried to train on it for like 3 or 4 months. And like, that was painful. Like trying to foot sweep somebody with a busted foot that sucks. But like emotionally, you're like, it's my job. I got to foot sweep this guy. If I don't foot sweep him, I'm not going to get the right reaction. Then I can't do the throw. And it's like, sometimes those smaller ones that you have to train through because they get prolongated because you're training and they last a long time, those suck. You know another one that really sucks? It's gonna sound like a sissy, but like when you tear the skin under your fingernail and you have to train. When you cut your fingernails too short and you gotta train.
Yeah.
That sucks. That sucks. I remember I was grip fighting with Iliadis. We were fighting in Austria and we were training hard. And I got his sleeve and I was holding it and I was coming down his back and he like punched me in the chest and he ripped the sleeve off. And all of a sudden I looked down and half my nail was missing, all the way down to the cuticle, cut right down the middle, ripped off. And I was like, I guess now I have to do the Austria camp with half a fingernail. And it's my sleeve hand. That sucks.
Yep.
That sucks.
There's no training in judo without pain.
Like
There's no training without pain.
cauliflower ears sucks.
Yeah.
Like broken noses in training suck. You know what? Another one that sucks when you get your teeth hit into your lip because you're not allowed to wear a mouth guard, and then it tries to heal, and you got to go eat the lunch the IJF gives you in the dinner, and you're like, everything hurts in your mouth. You got to drink. Like that sucks too. It does.
Yep.
You know it does.
I know it does. Yep. No question. Yeah, like I said, there's no training without pain. No training without pain.
All right, guys. That's what we have time for today. Thank you guys for
Thanks for
stopping
joining.
by. Awesome conversation.
Next
Thanks again,
month.
as always, Steve.